This is the 2020 presidential election. Plus math. Lots and lots of math.
Symmetry. The ability to take an object and turn it into two identical pieces that are arranged in an organized fashion. It is something you've been taught since grade school, but symmetry is more than just shapes. Symmetry is a way of life, a way of harmonious balance and proportion. A symmetrical society is one where all are created equal and equal opportunity rises above all. A symmetrical society is one that is organized. Research shows social disorganization influences crime within the community. And by voting for me, you're voting for safety, for symmetry.
There are 4 basic rigid motions used in the concept of symmetry: reflections, rotations, translations, and glide reflections. Symmetry involves moving an object in some way and having it look the same after the motion. It's a concept as old as time, with roots in algebra. The ancient Babylonians didn't quite have the algebraic process down yet, but they made a recipe that was similar. By the 18th century, people were able to put polynomial equations to symmetry and find it everywhere in nature. Sometimes, math really can be found outside of the classroom.
Listen, I don't have the time to discuss this and lay it all out for you to understand. The idea of processing is very simple. Clearly the superior option to my opposition. Without the fundamental functionality of processing, we would all be lost. I'm a very busy woman. I hold myself to the highest degree of punctuality. Without processing and the ability to manage my time, nothing would ever get done. A vote for me is a vote for the maintaining of everyday life. Now, if you excuse me, I have a meeting in 5 minutes.
Processing is the fundamental action of scheduling, a mathematical equation used to keep things organized and coordinated. We have the processors, or the workers, the tasks, or the unit of work broken down into smaller units, the processing times, or the amount of time it takes one processor to complete the task, and then we have precedent relations, or prerequisites that need to be done in a certain order. Basically, A has to be completed before B can even start. When 2 tasks are independent, however, they can begin at the same time. 2 ways of calculating processing time are the critical path algorithm and decreasing time algorithm. The critical path algorithm is the path with the longest processing time from start to finish. So for this example, the critical path is this one. Decreasing time is when you create a priority list that puts the longer jobs, being careful to watch out for prerequisites, in front of the shorter jobs. It doesn't always leave you with a short overall processing time and can often make tasks a lot longer.
Math. It's beautiful, and it's everywhere. Numbers. They're majestic. Fibonacci was a great man who was alive millions of years ago. He died for us. He died for math. So remember, a vote for me is a vote for you.
Jane's support is with... Wait, do we really know what her support is with? Fibonacci? Are we sure? She turned in a paper that said math rules as her entry. Okay, alright, we're going with it. Fibonacci is a sequence of numbers 0, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, 34, and so on and so forth for pretty much forever, and is characterized by every number after the first 2 is the sum of the 2 preceding ones. The best part about this math system is that it's everywhere in nature. Using the golden ratio and the Fibonacci sequence, you can create perfect spirals, rectangles, flowers, hurricanes, pictures, anything. And the series of numbers in each example will always include 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, and so on and so forth. Do you want to know why you find some people more attractive than others? The golden ratio can be found on their face. The golden ratio, or phi, is also another way to create perfect rectangles and pictures and is represented by the number 1.618, rounded roughly. If you divide any Fibonacci number by the previous Fibonacci number, you get closer and closer to the exact decimal number of the golden ratio. Jane must really know what she's doing if she wishes to emphasize the importance of the Fibonacci sequence and the golden ratio. Although her face is hardly a good representation. Each candidate is fighting for the process they believe is the most important. But in voting in elections, anything can happen. There are several different ways we are able to tally results, which can affect the outcome of an election greatly. So good luck, candidates, because voting is complicated and each new variable we add could turn a winner into a loser.
Wait, what?
Let's get started. The most frequently used voting system in the US is the Plurality Method. And here comes the tally. It's clear to see that Jane and Martha have gained the majority vote. Jane is only cheering because Jane doesn't understand math. Don't be like Jane. With the plurality method, winning the majority of votes in a population does not make you the plurality candidate, or the winner of the election.
We got over half the votes.
True, but in this case, majority does not mean what you think it does. The plurality method usually involves 3 or more candidates being ranked from the voter's favorite to their least favorite. The candidate with the most first-place votes is the plurality candidate, or the winner. It's important to note that the winner here does not need the majority, or over 50% of the votes, to win. This process is used throughout history as a way of holding democratic elections. The United States currently uses this process to elect the president. Unfortunately, although plurality voting is one of the most common election processes, people sometimes fall prey to strategic voting, or insincere voting, during a plurality election. In this case, people vote for their second choice because they're afraid their first choice has no chance of winning. This shows most commonly in two-party systems, with a third party hanging off on the side somewhere and trying to gain support.
Why am I the third-party candidate?
The competent person usually is. We can clearly see that none of you are happy with this, so let's try a different way of holding an election, called weighted voting, a system demonstrated by the Electoral College. Using this system, 1 vote doesn't equal 1 point, because some people have more power. So pretend for a moment that you were part of a group of leaders rather than fighting to be the leader, and today you're voting to pass a certain motion. You have the players, you guys, the weights, which I'll give you in a moment, and the quota, or the minimum number that you need to reach to pass a legislation. Depending on the weight you get, you could be a critical player, or someone whose desertion of a winning coalition turns it into a losing one. If given the quota of 10, and weights 5, 6, and 1, respectively for players 1, 2, and 3, you get something that looks like this. Player 1 and Player 2 meet the quota together, so they are critical players. If either of them drops, the quota won't be met. If Player 3 joins the group, Player 1 and Player 2 are still critical, but Player 3 is not, because 12, the total, minus 1, Player 3's weight, still meets the quota.
But this isn't fair.
Martha, your vote is weighted at 30.
Never mind.
Jane, your vote is 25.
I ain't even mad.
And Stacy, your vote is 5.
What? I don't matter then. They can do whatever they want, they don't need my vote.
Exactly. In this situation, Stacy is what we call the dummy, or a player with no power.
Really?
The only way a motion will be passed is if Martha and Jane both agree to pass it. And in the reverse, if they decide not to pass it, Stacy can do nothing to stop it because the only votes that meet the quota together are Martha and Jane's. If we change the situation slightly and give Stacy a weight of 40, Martha a weight of 10, and Jane a weight of 10, we have what is called a dictator, a player who has enough votes to pass any motion single-handedly. A dictator's weight is always greater than or equal to the quota. Whenever there is a dictator, all other players have no power. As long as Stacy supports a motion, it will be passed, because Jane and Martha's votes are too insignificant to change anything.
I like this one.
Let's try another voting technique called Pairwise Comparison. Here, the voters will be asked to rank each of you in order, from their favorite to their least favorite. Let's collect that now.
You're joking? She has more first-place votes than me?
Well, she is wearing an American flag.
Sorry, Stacy, but the people have spoken.
Well, the people are stupid. Really?
Don't worry, all might not be as it seems. Pairwise is a system that sets all players against each other. Let's start with Jane versus Stacy. When you look at this graph, Jane is ahead of Stacy twice. So she gets 100 plus 20. Stacy is ahead of Jane only once, so she gets 93. In Stacy versus Jane, Jane is the obvious winner, so she gets 1 point. When you do this with the rest of the candidates, you receive Jane as having 2 points, Stacy has 1, and Martha has 0. Jane is still the winner by pairwise comparison. When there are more variables and numbers set against each other, sometimes the apparent first place winner doesn't actually win after doing the math. Unfortunately, in this case, sorry Stacy, Jane did win. Elections are fickle things, truly. Kenneth Arrow discovered in 1949 in what is known as Arrow's impossibility theorem that elections involving 3 or more candidates are mathematically flawed. So why do we still use these methods? Because we don't exactly have better options.
Wait a minute. We're 3 or more candidates.
Aw, she can count.
Excuse me, I'm an educated woman. That's what you lost. Nobody wants to see your face on a picture.
It's a wonder how democracy has survived this long using such a flawed system, isn't it? That's the worst part about voting. Different systems can easily affect whether someone wins or loses. We'll move on to our final method called the Borda count.
Why was that so overdramatic?
The benefit of the Borda count is that it's thorough. The cons, however, is that it's inefficient. Named after the Frenchman Jean-Charles Borda, each place on a ballot is assigned points. We give 1 point to last place, 2 to second to last, and so on and so forth. The points are tallied, and the candidate with the most points wins. Let's figure that out now.
What exactly do those numbers mean?
Well, you'll just have to give me a minute to find a calculator. There's lots of different things that have to.
Hey, watch it!
No, that's not supposed to go there. There's each candidate gets more points. 220, and then you have to do the rest of it. Alright, based on these numbers, the candidate with the most points is Stacy. You see, the plurality method and the Borda count sometimes come up with the same answer, but not always. Borda count can be tricky to calculate and decipher, so don't always assume the plurality candidate is automatically the winner of the Borda count as well. This time, Stacy got lucky.
I'll take it. Seems like people like symmetry more than Fibonacci and processing.
Only because it's easy.
You know what else is
A
easy?
just and fair election has 4 criteria. None involve punching another candidate in the face. The majority criterion, a candidate with a majority of first place votes should win. Something that the presence of the Electoral College in the US voting system sometimes violates. The Condorcet criterion, a candidate that beats all others in pairwise comparison should win. The monotonicity criterion. If candidate X is the winner, then this candidate should still be the winner if a voter had ranked X higher on their preference ballot. And last but not least, independent of irrelevant alternatives. If candidate X won, eliminating a candidate who lost should mean that X would still win. Another criteria that is sometimes violated in the US election system by the presence of a third party and insincere voting.
So who won?
Because the most popular voting method is plurality, the results from the 2020 presidential math election gives us Stacy as our winner.
So glad we don't use this weighted voting system in real life. Who would use such a thing like that?
The American government.
Thank you for joining us for the 2020 presidential election. Good night, America.
Did you just bite me?